The Mafia boss came home early and found his maid teaching his blind mother how to fight. He thought she was hiding something dangerous. What he didn't know, she was the only reason his mother was still safe, and the truth behind her would leave him speechless. The deal had fallen through in under an hour, which was why Cole Miller's tires were crunching up the gravel drive of the lakeside estate, while the afternoon sun still hung gold over the water. He hadn't called ahead. He never did. A man who announced himself gave others time to prepare, and Cole had built everything he owned on the principle that the prepared man wins. He killed the engine and stepped out into the quiet. Birds, the soft slap of the lake against the dock, the wind moving through the old maples his father had planted 40 years ago. Home. The one place in his complicated world that was supposed to stay simple. Then he heard it. A sharp crack of wood against wood, then another. A rhythm to it. Strike, pause, pivot, strike. It came from the private courtyard behind the east wing, the one screened by hedges where his mother liked to sit in the mornings. Cole's hand drifted toward the inside of his jacket out of pure habit before he caught himself. This was his house, his grounds. There was no reason for that sound, which was exactly why he didn't like it. He moved along the stone path without a sound, suit jacket whispering, and eased up to the gap in the hedge. What he saw made him stop breathing. His mother was standing in the center of the courtyard, Evelyn Miller, 63 years old, who had not seen a sunrise in 11 years, who needed a hand on her elbow to cross a room she'd lived in for decades. She was holding her walking cane out in front of her like a weapon, and she was moving. A slow, controlled turn of the hips, the cane sweeping low, then snapping up to catch an imaginary strike. In front of her stood Sarah. Sarah, the maid, the cheerful, soft-spoken, plus-sized woman he'd hired barely a month ago on his housekeeper's recommendation. The one who hummed while she dusted and always seemed to have flour on her apron. Right now, she held a wooden practice staff in both hands, and there was nothing soft about the way she held it. She tapped it against Evelyn's cane, testing, correcting. "Good," Sarah said. Her voice had changed. Gone was the breathy, apologetic chirp Cole knew. This voice was low, steady, sure. "Feel where my weight is. Don't look for me. You'll never find me that way. Listen for me. My feet just shifted left. Where am I going?" Evelyn smiled, and without hesitation she pivoted and brought the cane around in a tight arc that would have caught a man across the ribs. Sarah blocked it cleanly with the staff. "There she is," Sarah said, and there was warmth in it, and pride. Cole's mind raced through a dozen explanations and rejected every one. His mother, his blind mother, who he protected like the last fragile thing in a hard life, being taught to fight by a woman who had spent a month pretending she could barely lift a vacuum. He stepped through the gap in the hedge. "Don't move." Both women froze. Evelyn's head tilted toward him, that unerring way she had of finding a voice in the dark. Sarah turned slowly, the staff lowering to her side. For 1/2 second, Cole saw something flicker across her face, a fast, professional assessment of him, the exits, the distance between them, before the familiar maid's mask slid back into place. But he'd seen it. He'd built his life on catching exactly that kind of half-second. "Mr. Miller." Sarah's voice was breathy again, flustered. "You're home early? I was just... Mrs. Miller wanted a little exercise and—" "Stop!" The word came out flat. He looked at the staff in her hands, the cane in his mother's, the sweat on both their brows that told him this had been going on long before he arrived. "That is not exercise. I know what I just watched. So you're going to put that down, and one of you is going to tell me the truth, right now." "Cole?" His mother's voice was calm, far too calm for a woman who'd just been caught doing the impossible. "Lower your voice. You'll frighten the staff." "The staff." He let out a short, disbelieving breath. "Mom, she's the staff, and she's been lying to me since the day she walked through that door." Sarah set the wooden staff down against the bench, slowly, with both hands visible the whole time, the way a person did when they didn't want to alarm someone dangerous, the way he trained his own people to do.
"Mr. Miller,"
she said, and the chirp was gone now, replaced by that same low, even tone she'd used a moment ago.
"I'd suggest we take this inside. The courtyard isn't a good place for this conversation."
"And why is that?" She met his eyes.
"Because there are 3 places along that hedge line where a person could stand and never be seen. I've checked. Have you?"
The silence that followed was the loudest thing Cole had heard all day. Evelyn reached out, found the back of the garden bench by memory, and lowered herself onto it with a small sigh. "Well," she said, almost to herself, "I suppose that's that. I'd hoped we'd have another week." Cole turned to his mother. Another week for what? But Evelyn only folded her hands over the top of her cane and turned her sightless eyes toward the lake, as if she could still somehow see it. "Sarah's right," she said, quietly. "Inside, there are some things, Cole, that I should have told you a long time ago, and some things I couldn't tell you, because you never would have believed me." She paused. "You will now." Cole's study had always been the room where problems got solved. Dark wood, heavy curtains, a desk that had belonged to his grandfather. He'd negotiated deals in here that moved millions across borders. Now he stood behind that desk with his arms crossed, watching a maid sit calmly in the leather chair across from him, as though she'd been invited. Evelyn sat beside her, cane resting against her knee. "Start talking," Cole said. "Who sent you?" "No one sent me," Sarah answered. "A woman doesn't fake being a maid for a month without a reason. You learned the layout of my house. You got close to my mother. You've been counting sight lines in my courtyard." He leaned forward, palms flat on the desk. "That's reconnaissance. So I'll ask again. Which family put you here? Was it the Castellanos, the Reyes group out of Chicago?" Sarah didn't flinch at either name. That bothered him more than if she had. "You think I'm an infiltrator," she said. "I think you're very good at your job. I just don't think your job is dusting." "On that, you're right." She folded her hands in her lap. "But you've got the rest backward, and if you keep chasing the wrong answer, you're going to get someone finished. Probably her." She nodded toward Evelyn. Cole's jaw tightened. "Don't bring my mother into your story. She's already in it. She's the reason I'm here." He opened his mouth to fire back, but Evelyn lifted one hand, and the room went quiet the way it always did when she chose to speak. "He's not going to believe you, dear," Evelyn said gently. "He believes things he can see. He always has, even as a boy. So let me tell him, because he has to believe me." She turned her face toward her son. "Cole, sit down." "Mom, sit down." He sat. Even now, even here, the habit of obeying that voice ran deeper than 30 years. Evelyn drew a slow breath. 11 years ago, I lost my eyes. You know that. What you don't know is what I gained. When you can't see, the world comes to you another way. Footsteps tell me who's walking before they speak. A change in someone's breath tells me when they're lying. I hear the house call. Every door, every floorboard, every voice that thinks it's far enough away that the blind woman won't catch it. A small, cold feeling started in Cole's chest. "A week ago," Evelyn went on, "I was sitting in the morning room. The window was open. Out by the boathouse, 2 of your security men were talking. They thought no one could hear them over the generator." Her hands tightened on the cane. "They were not discussing schedules, Cole. They were discussing how to get a team past the gate, which night you'd be away, which door would be left unlocked. And one of them said a name, the name of the man giving the orders." She paused. "He said Vance." The cold feeling spread. Vance, his chief of security, the man who'd held a flashlight for Cole at his father's grave, the man trusted with the codes to every door in this house. "That's not possible," Cole said, but the words came out thin. "I told myself the same thing," Evelyn said.
For about an hour. Then I asked myself who you'd believe if I came to you with it. A blind old woman who overheard something through a window? You'd have asked Vance to look into it, and Vance would have made the problem disappear. Maybe me along with it. Cole said nothing, because she was right. That was exactly what he would have done. So I made my own arrangements, Evelyn continued. I have an old friend from before your father, from a part of my life you never knew about. I called her. I told her I needed someone who could protect this house without anyone knowing they were doing it, someone who could get inside without raising a single eyebrow. A faint smile touched her lips. She sent me Sarah. Your housekeeper thought she was just passing along a good worker's name. She had no idea. Cole turned slowly to look at the woman in the chair, the maid, the reconnaissance, the sightlines.
You hired her, he said to his mother. Behind my back. You brought a stranger into my house and told her everything. I brought a guardian into my house, Evelyn corrected, because my son's own men are planning to walk a strike team through his front door, and my son was too proud to imagine it. Her sightless eyes didn't waver. I wasn't going to bury you, Cole. Not after your father. Not while I still have breath to stop it. The study was silent, except for the tick of the old clock on the mantel. Cole pressed his fingers to his temple. Part of him still wanted to throw both of them out, to call Vance up here and watch the man's face and trust his own gut the way he always had. But his gut was the problem. His gut said Vance was loyal. His gut had said the deal today would close too. If this is a lie, he said finally, looking at Sarah, an elaborate one to get into my organization, you've picked a dangerous way to do it. It's not a lie, Sarah said, and I can prove it, but not here. She glanced at the walls, the lamps, the air vent above the door. You hired Vance, which means Vance has had years to decide what in this house has ears. She stood, smoothing her apron, the gesture almost absurd now. Tomorrow morning, somewhere public, somewhere loud, somewhere he can't have prepared. Bring nothing that connects to your network. I'll show you exactly what your chief of security has been selling. She walked to the door, then paused with her hand on the frame. And Mr. Miller, act normal tonight. If Vance senses you know, the timeline moves up, and neither of us is ready for that yet. She left. Cole looked at his mother, who was smiling faintly at nothing at all. You're enjoying this, he said. A little, Evelyn admitted. It's the first time in 11 years I've been useful. The diner on West 38th was the kind of place where nobody looked twice at anybody. Steam rose off the griddle, plates clattered, and 100 conversations folded over each other until they became one wall of noise. Cole slid into a corner booth with his back to the wall, the way he always sat, and watched the door. Sarah arrived 4 minutes later. She'd left the apron and the maid's dress behind. Today she wore a plain dark coat over plain dark clothes, her hair pulled back, and she moved through the crowded room without bumping a single chair. She scanned the place once, the exits, the faces, the man reading a newspaper who'd been there too long, and then sat down across from him. You came alone, she said. Good. You said no network. I left the phone in the car. He pushed a coffee toward her that he'd already ordered. Talk. Who are you really? She wrapped both hands around the cup. My name is Sarah Lane. That part's true. Before I cleaned your floors, I trained people. Corporate protection details mostly. Executives, their families, the kind of clients who needed someone who could spot a threat in a crowded room and end it before anyone reached for a weapon. I was good at it. Better than the men they paired me with, which most of them hated. And then? Something hardened in her face. And then a client I'd warned about a man on his own staff decided he knew better. He kept the man on. 3 weeks later, that man walked the client's daughter out of a hotel and into a car, and it took us 9 hours to get her back. She turned the cup in slow circles. She came home, but I left the business. I was done protecting people who wouldn't listen to the person they were paying to keep them alive. Cole studied her. It was a clean story, told plainly, with a kind of detail people didn't invent. But clean stories were also the easiest to rehearse. "So my mother's friend pulls you out of retirement," he said, "and you take a maid's job in a stranger's house on the word of an old woman who overheard something through a window."
"I took the job because the old woman was right."
Sarah reached into her coat and set a small device on the table between them, a slim black drive.
"I didn't come to you with a story, Mr. Miller. I came with proof. I spent the last 3 weeks doing what your own people should have been doing, watching Vance."
She slid the drive closer. "That's a copy. The original somewhere you'll never find, in case this conversation goes badly. On it you'll find financial transfers, offshore, layered, but they trace back. Vance has been paid 4 times in the last 6 months, large sums. Each payment landed within a day of a shipment of yours getting rerouted, delayed, or intercepted. You've been losing cargo and blaming bad luck. It wasn't luck." Cole's coffee had gone cold in his hand.
"Who's paying him?"
"A competitor who wants your shipping routes without a fight. Vance's job isn't to finish you, at least not at first. It's to make you look weak, make your partners nervous. Then, on a chosen night, his team walks into your home, takes control, and presents you with a choice. Sign the routes over, or your family pays. A bloodless coup. You hand him the keys to keep the people you love breathing." She let that sit. "He picked your mother as the pressure point. He didn't count on her hearing him." The wall of diner noise carried on around them, indifferent.
"There's more," Sarah said, "and this is the part you need to hear, because it's the part that should frighten you."
She leaned in.
2 of your other men are in on it. I don't yet know which 2 for certain. Vance is careful, he compartmentalizes. But the conversation your mother overheard had 2 voices, and neither of them was Vance. He doesn't get his own hands dirty. He has people for that. People who still answer your phone and stand at your door and tell you everything's fine.
Cole sat very still. The list of men he trusted with his life ran through his mind, and now every face on it carried a question mark. "Why you?" he asked finally. "Why take this on? You said you walked away. You don't owe my mother anything." For the first time, Sarah's professional calm wavered, just slightly.
"Your mother's friend, the one who called me. Years ago, when everything in my life fell apart after that job, she was the one person who didn't treat me like I was broken. She gave me somewhere to land."
Sarah looked down at the drive.
"When she called and said an old woman she loved was in danger and too proud a son was going to walk her into it, I didn't think about whether I owed anybody. I just packed a bag."
Cole picked up the drive and turned it over in his fingers. It was light. Such a small thing to hold a man's whole world. "If everything on here is real," he said slowly, "then I can't trust a single person inside my own walls. I can't go to my men. I can't increase the guard. Every guard might be his. I'm alone."
"You're not alone." Sarah met his eyes. "You have a blind woman with the best ears in the state, and you have me. The question is whether you're going to keep being the kind of man who only believes what he can see."
She stood, leaving her coffee untouched.
"Look at the drive tonight, then decide. But decide fast, Mr. Miller, because Vance has been patient for 6 months, and patient men always have a date in mind."
She walked out into the noise of the city and was gone before he'd even pocketed the drive. The drive had kept Cole up until 4 in the morning. By the time the sun came over the lake, he'd read every transfer twice, cross-checked the dates against his own shipping logs, and arrived at the one conclusion he'd been fighting since the courtyard. Sarah was telling the truth. Every number lined up. Every loss he'd written off as bad luck had a payment sitting right behind it. But there was still one thing he hadn't tested: the woman herself. He took her to the gym that afternoon. It sat at the end of a dead-end street in Brooklyn, a brick building his family had owned since before he was born. His grandfather had trained here. The ring in the center sagged with age, the heavy bags hung still and cracked, and dust floated in the bars of light coming through the high windows. No cameras, no staff, no ears in the walls. The one place in the city Cole knew was clean. "You read the drive," Sarah said. It wasn't a question. She'd noticed the shadows under his eyes.
I read it. He shrugged off his jacket and laid it over a bench. And I believe the paper. Paper doesn't lie. But the paper isn't going to be standing between my mother and a strike team at 2 in the morning. You are. So before I put my family's life in your hands, I need to see those hands work. Sarah looked at the ring, then at him, and something close to amusement crossed her face. You want to spar? I want to know what you can actually do. You're a foot taller than me and you've clearly trained. She set her bag down. You sure? I'm sure. All right. She didn't step into the ring. Instead, she walked to the center of the open floor and turned to face him. But not a match. A match tells you who's stronger. That's not the question you're really asking. You want to know if I can protect someone who can't protect herself, in the dark, against men who mean harm. She pointed to the bench. So here's the test. That jacket is your mother. I'm standing between it and you. Your job is to get past me and put your hand on it, any way you can. I won't strike you, I'll only stop you. If you reach it, I failed and you send me home. Cole almost smiled. You're giving me the advantage. I'm giving you the truth. Go. He moved. Cole was fast for a big man, and he didn't telegraph. He came in low and to her left, the angle most people couldn't cover, a feint built into the step to pull her the wrong way. It was a move that had worked on trained men. It didn't work on her. She didn't lunge at the feint. She simply wasn't where he expected her to be, having shifted her weight a fraction of a second before he committed. His hand caught air. Before he could recover, her forearm was against his shoulder, redirecting his own momentum, and his charge carried him 3 steps past the bench into empty space. He hadn't been hit, he'd been steered, like water around a stone. He turned, recalculated, and came again, higher this time, a grab for the wrist instead of a rush. She caught the grab, turned it, and used his weight against his own joint so that suddenly his arm wanted to fold and his feet wanted to follow. He found himself bent forward, off balance, with the bench still a body's length away, and no way to reach it without going down. She held him there for exactly 1 second, long enough for him to understand, then released cleanly and stepped back to her spot. Size is leverage, she said, not even breathing hard. Men spend their whole lives thinking it's a weakness on me. They commit everything to one big move because they're sure they'll just bowl me over. The moment they commit, they've given me their balance. I don't have to be stronger than you. I just have to be smarter about where your weight is going. Cole straightened, working his shoulder. He'd trained for 20 years and he hadn't laid a finger on the bench. Worse, he understood now that she'd let him keep his dignity. She could have put him on the floor both times. She'd chosen not to. He came a 3rd time. He didn't plan it. He just went, fast and unannounced, throwing the feint and the grab and a shoulder all at once, everything he had. The floor met his back before he understood he was falling. Not hard. She'd guided him down, one hand controlling his arm, the other cradling the back of his head so it never touched the wood. He lay there looking up at the dusty windows, her knee pinning his shoulder, completely unable to move. That's a non-lethal control hold, she said above him. I can hold a man twice my size like this until help arrives, and he walks away with nothing worse than wounded pride. No weapons, no noise, no blood on your mother's floor. She released him and offered her hand. He took it. She pulled him up like he weighed nothing. Cole stood there a moment, catching his breath, looking at this woman who'd cleaned his kitchen for a month while quietly being the most dangerous person he'd ever hired. All right, he said. You're in. We do this together. We catch Vance in the act on a night of our choosing, so there's no question and no escape. He picked up his jacket, his mother, and held it for a second. But I run point. It's my house, my family, my call when it matters. Agreed. Sarah slung her bag over her shoulder. On one condition. When I tell you to move, you move. No pride. The second your pride is louder than my voice, your mother's the one who pays for it." She held out her hand again, this time to seal it. Cole shook it. The alliance was real now. Tense, wary, but real. And somewhere across the city, a man with the keys to Cole's house was counting down to a night only he knew. For now. The plan needed Vance to believe his moment had finally come, so Cole gave him one. For 2 days, he played the part. He let Vance see him distracted, short-tempered, buried in the failing numbers from his rerouted shipments. He complained, within earshot, that he was stretched, too thin. And then he announced, casually, over coffee in the room he now assumed Vance could hear, that he'd be attending the Hartwell Gala on Long Island Saturday night. A long evening, important partners. He'd be gone until well past midnight. He watched Vance receive the news. The man didn't blink, didn't smile, just nodded and said he'd arranged the cars. But Cole had spent 2 days learning to do what his mother did, listening past the words, and he caught the small thing. A half-beat of stillness. The pause of a man filing away a date he'd been waiting for. Saturday came. The bait was set. The Hartwell estate glittered. Crystal, white orchids, a string quartet playing under chandeliers. 200 of the most powerful people in his world, drifting between conversations with glasses in their hands. Cole moved among them in a tailored tuxedo, shaking hands, laughing at the right moments, the very picture of a man with nothing on his mind but business. Inside, every nerve was wound tight. His phone sat in his breast pocket. On it, a private feed, not from the estate's main security system, which Vance controlled, but from 3 small wireless cameras Sarah had hidden during the week. The morning room, the main staircase, the corridor outside his mother's suite. 3 angles Vance didn't know existed. "You're holding your jaw too tight," murmured a voice at his shoulder. It was Daniel Hartwell, the host, an old associate of Cole's father, a heavy, jovial man with sharp eyes that missed very little. "Long week," Cole said. "It always is, for men like us." Hartwell steered him gently toward the terrace, away from the crowd. "I'll be honest, Cole. People are talking. Your shipments, the delays. Some of my partners are wondering if the Miller operation is as solid as it used to be." He swirled his drink. "I defended you, but I'd be a poor friend if I didn't tell you what's being said." Cole forced an easy smile, even as the words confirmed everything Sarah had told him in the diner. Make you look weak, make your partners nervous. Vance's plan was already working, out here in the open, in rooms Cole had thought were safe. "The operation's never been more solid," Cole said. "Give it a week, you'll see." Hartwell studied him, then nodded slowly. "I hope so. I liked your father. I'd hate to watch his house go to someone else." He drifted back inside. Cole stayed on the terrace a moment, the cold lake air clearing his head, then slipped his hand into his pocket and tilted the phone just enough to glance at the feed. The morning room camera showed nothing. The staircase, nothing. The corridor outside his mother's suite, a figure moved across it. Cole's stomach dropped before his mind caught up. He angled the phone, heart hammering, and then let out a slow breath. It was Sarah. Tonight she wore the night shift maid's uniform, a cart of folded towels in front of her, moving down the corridor at the unhurried pace of a woman doing her rounds. To any camera Vance controlled, she was nobody. Furniture. She paused at his mother's door, knocked softly, and went in. His mother was in there, pretending to sleep, waiting. The 2 most precious and most dangerous people in his life, sitting in the dark, baiting a trap with their own lives. He hated it. Every cell in him wanted to be there instead of trapped in a tuxedo 2 counties away, smiling at people who thought he was finished. But that was the point. He had to be seen here, far away, distracted, weak. Vance would never move while the lord of the house was home. He'd move the instant he was sure Cole was gone and the estate was soft. A text came through on the phone's second line, a number not in any directory. Sarah. M settled. House quiet. Two of the night guards aren't ones I recognize from the regular rotation. New faces, watching the south entrance. Cole's jaw tightened. New faces. The two voices from the boathouse, the men he hadn't been able to identify. They were on shift tonight, at the door, the night the master happened to be away. He typed back with his thumb, slow and careful, keeping his face neutral as a waiter passed. Don't engage. Confirm only. I'm watching the feed. Understood, came the reply. If it happens tonight. He's got the conditions he's been waiting for. Cole pocketed the phone and turned back toward the warm light of the party. He took a fresh glass from a passing tray and raised it, laughing, to a cluster of men who were almost certainly betting against him. Across the room, Daniel Hartwell caught his eye and gave a small, uncertain nod. For 2 hours, Cole worked the room with half his mind, the other half living inside the small screen against his chest. He memorized the rhythm of the feed, the empty corridor, the still staircase, the dark morning room. Quiet. 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 Near midnight, the quartet slowed into something soft, and the crowd began to thin. Cole made his goodbyes, the gracious guest, in no apparent hurry. He even let Hartwell walk into the door. "Get some sleep, Cole," the old man said. "You look like a man waiting for bad news." "Just tired," Cole said. He stepped out into the cold night, the valet bringing his car around. He slid behind the wheel, the engine purring, and allowed himself one more glance at the feed before pulling away. The corridor outside his mother's suite was empty. The staircase was empty. And then, on the morning room camera, the lights flickered once and died. Every screen went black at the same instant. Cole's blood turned to ice. He dropped the phone on the passenger seat, threw the car into gear, and the tires screamed against the gravel as he tore out of the Hartwell estate and onto the dark highway home. The estate went black at 2 in the morning, and Sarah was ready for it. She felt it before she fully understood it, the low hum of the house cutting out all at once. The refrigerator in the far kitchen, the soft whir of the climate system, the faint electric life that fills every large building and that you only notice when it stops. Then the small red standby lights on the hallway sensors blinked out, and the darkness became total. Vance hadn't just finished the lights, he'd finished everything. Power grid, backup generator, the comms tower on the hill that carried every phone and alarm signal off the property. In one move, he'd cut the house off from the rest of the world. No calls out, no cameras, no help coming that wasn't already inside. Smart, Sarah thought, moving fast through the dark toward Evelyn's door. He'd done this before. You didn't kill a backup generator that cleanly unless you'd studied exactly where it was. She didn't need light. She'd spent her first week mapping this house in the dark on purpose, walking the halls blindfolded, counting steps between doors, memorizing where the floor creaked and where it didn't. She reached Evelyn's room and slipped inside. "It's me," she whispered. "I know your step," came Evelyn's calm voice from the bed. She was already sitting up, already dressed, cane in hand. "They've shut everything down. I can hear how quiet it is. The whole house is holding its breath." "How many do you hear?" Evelyn went still. For several seconds there was nothing but the old woman's slow breathing. Then, "South entrance. The 2 new ones. They've opened the door, and more behind them. 4, maybe 5 sets of feet coming in off the gravel." Her head turned. "They're not rushing. They think no one knows they're here." "Good. Let them think it." Sarah took Evelyn's elbow, gentle but firm. "We move to the safe room. Now. Quiet as we practiced." The plan was simple, and it was solid. The sub-level safe room was a reinforced box buried beneath the east wing, its own air supply, a door 3 inches of steel thick. Get Evelyn inside, seal it, and no strike team on Earth would get through before Cole arrived with the authorities. Sarah had checked the room twice that week. It was the one place in the house she trusted completely. They moved through the black corridors, Evelyn's hand on Sarah's arm, both of them silent. Down the servants' stair, along the lower hall. Sarah counted doors by touch. The men were above them now. She could hear the muffled thud of boots spreading through the upper floors, searching room by room for a target who'd already slipped beneath them. They reached the safe room door. Sarah found the keypad by feel, punched in the code Cole had given her, and pressed her palm to the cold steel. Nothing happened. She tried again. The keypad gave a single, flat tone. Wrong. Not dead. Locked. From somewhere else. A small green light she'd never seen before glowed at the top of the doorframe. An override light. The kind that meant a master key, higher than any guest code, had been used to seal the room from the outside and shut every other code out. Sarah's stomach turned over. Vance hadn't just planned to breach the house. He'd planned for this exact moment, for someone to run for the safe room, and he'd taken it off the board before the night even began. The safe room wasn't a refuge anymore. It was a sealed wall at the end of a trap. "It won't open," Evelyn said quietly. Not a question. She'd heard the tone, the wrongness of it. "He locked it out. Master override." Sarah turned, putting her back to the steel door, and made herself breathe. The corridor stretched dark in both directions. Above, the boots were getting closer to the lower stair. The one room she'd counted on was gone, and they were standing in the narrow, reinforced hallway outside it, with men coming down to find them. She felt the panic rise and shoved it flat. Panic was for people who didn't have a plan. She always had a plan. "New approach," she said, low and steady. "The safe room's out, but these corridors down here are the most defensible part of the house. Reinforced walls, only 2 ways in, choke points. If we have to make a stand, this is where I'd choose to make it." She pressed something cold into Evelyn's free hand, a small tactical flashlight, narrow and bright. "Remember what I told you about this?" Evelyn's fingers closed around it. "Point and press, into their eyes. The light is useless to me, but it'll blind them. It buys me a half-second, and a half-second is all I ever need." Sarah guided the older woman into the deepest corner of the corridor, a recess where 2 walls met and no one could come at her from behind. "Stay here. Don't move from this spot. Use your ears. Tell me what you hear, and I'll handle the rest. Can you do that?" "I taught you half of what you know," Evelyn said, and there was iron under the calm now. "I can do that." Far above, on a dark highway, Cole's headlights cut through the night as his car ate the miles. He'd tried the house line 6 times, tried Sarah's number, tried the estate's emergency channel. Every call died the same way. No signal, no tone, nothing. The comms tower was gone. His house had vanished off the grid, as if it had never existed. He drove faster than he ever had, knuckles white on the wheel, the speedometer climbing past anything safe. 20 minutes out, maybe less. 20 minutes in which the 2 people he loved most were trapped in the dark with men sent to take them, and he could do nothing but drive. In the buried corridor, Sarah heard the first boot touch the bottom step. She moved into the darkness to meet it. The first man came down the stair with a flashlight in one hand, sweeping the beam ahead of him. He was confident, careless even, the way men are when they think they're hunting the helpless. He expected an old blind woman and a maid huddled somewhere, easy to corner. He didn't expect the dark to be on someone else's side.
"He's at the bottom of the steps,"
Evelyn whispered from her corner, her voice no louder than a breath.
"Right side. He's leaning that way, favoring his left foot. He just stopped."
Sarah pressed flat against the wall in the recess where the corridor turned, exactly where the man's flashlight beam couldn't reach until he'd already passed her. She breathed slow. She let him come. The beam swept the far end of the hall, found nothing, and the man stepped forward into the corridor proper.
As he drew level with the recess, Sarah moved. She didn't lunge. She flowed out of the dark behind him, one hand clamping over the wrist that held the light, turning it up and away, the other arm sliding across his throat from behind. He was bigger than her. It didn't matter. She had his balance before he knew she was there, and she walked him backward off his own feet, the control hold folding him down silently to the floor.
A few seconds of pressure, precise and bloodless, and he went limp. Not dead, just gone. For hours. She eased him down so even his fall made no sound, took his flashlight and switched it off. 1.
Did you hear that?
She breathed toward Evelyn's corner.
Barely, you're quiet.
A pause.
2 more coming. They split up at the top. One's taking the servant's stair, the other's coming around through the lower kitchen. They'll reach you from 2 directions.
Sarah's mind mapped it instantly. A pincer. If they came at her at once from both ends of the corridor, she'd be caught in the middle with no wall to put her back against. She couldn't fight 2 directions in a straight hallway. So she wouldn't fight them in the hallway.
Stay still and stay quiet, she whispered. Whatever you hear, don't call out. I'll come back to you.
She melted into the dark, moving toward the lower kitchen, choosing which threat to meet first. The kitchen had corners, counters, hanging racks. A trained person could make that room a maze. The second man came through the kitchen doorway, light sweeping. Sarah was already low behind the central island. She let him advance 2 steps past her, then rose silently behind him, and pressed the small tactical flashlight she carried up close to the side of his face and clicked it on full. The blast of light an inch from his eyes in pure darkness blinded him completely. He gasped, threw a hand up, his own flashlight clattering to the tile. In that half-second of helplessness, Sarah took his arm, turned it into a lock, and guided him down against the island with a control hold that cut off everything but his shock. He struggled once, hard. She held. He stilled. 2. From down the corridor, Evelyn's voice came soft and urgent through the dark.
The third one heard the flashlight drop. He stopped on the servant's stair. He's listening now. He's smarter than the others. He's turned his own light off.
Sarah went cold. A smart one. The kind who understood that in the dark, the hunter with the light was the one who could be seen. He'd given up his advantage on purpose to take away hers. Now they were both blind. Now it came down to ears. And on ears, Sarah had the best partner in the world. She crept back toward Evelyn's corner, silent as smoke, and crouched beside the old woman. She put her lips to Evelyn's ear and breathed, barely a sound. Where is he? Evelyn's sightless eyes stared into the black. Her whole body had gone still, every sense pulled inward and out through the dark house she'd memorized over 11 years. The faucet that dripped, the way sound carried down the stone stair, the faint give of the old floorboard on the 3rd step from the bottom. A long moment passed. Sarah didn't breathe.
3rd step,
Evelyn whispered.
He just shifted his weight onto it. He's coming down slow, testing each one. He's at the bottom now. He's stepped off into the corridor. He's 12 feet from you, coming straight. He has something in his right hand, not a light, heavier. He's holding it ready.
Sarah pressed Evelyn's hand once, understood, and rose into the dark. She didn't move toward him. She let him come to her, counting his steps in her head against Evelyn's whispered count. 10 feet. 8. She could hear him now herself, the faint scuff of caution, the held breath of a careful man. 6 feet. 4.
Now,
Evelyn breathed.
He's right in front of you. He's raising his arm.
Sarah ducked low, under the swing she couldn't see but knew was coming, and drove up inside his reach, where the dark made his size and his weapon useless. She caught the descending arm, redirected it past her head, and used his own forward momentum to put him over her hip and down hard onto the stone. The thing in his hand, a heavy collapsible baton, skittered away into the black. Before he could roll, she had him in the control hold, knee to shoulder, his arm pinned, his face to the cold floor.
He fought harder than the others. He bucked, he twisted, he was strong. She held. She'd held bigger men. She felt his strength burn out against the lock, felt the moment he understood he wasn't getting up, and then felt him go still. 3. Sarah knelt there in the absolute dark, breathing hard at last, the third man pinned beneath her, the corridor silent. From the gala count and Evelyn's ears, that was the breach team that had come below, but not all of them.
"Evelyn,"
She whispered.
"how many came in the south door?"
A pause.
5. You've taken 3 down here.
The old woman's voice was steady but tight.
Which means 2 are still upstairs, and one of them...
She stopped, listening.
One of them just stopped searching. He's moving with purpose now, toward the front. He's not hunting us anymore, Sarah. He's leaving, and he's carrying something.
Sarah's jaw set. Vance. Cutting his losses, taking what he came for, and running. Far outside, headlights swept across the gates of the Miller estate as Cole's car roared up the drive. Cole hit the front steps at a dead run. The great doors of the estate stood half open, the house beyond them black and silent. He'd left a glittering gala 20 minutes ago and arrived at a tomb. No lights, no alarm, no sign of the men who were supposed to guard this place. He didn't slow down. He went through the doors and into the dark foyer, his eyes straining to adjust, his heart slamming against his ribs. And there, crossing the marble floor toward the door he'd just come through, was a figure with a leather bag in one hand and a phone light in the other. Vance. The thin beam swung up and caught Cole's face. For a single frozen second, the two men stared at each other across the grand foyer. The master of the house, who was supposed to be miles away, and the chief of security, who was supposed to be loyal. Cole. Vance recovered first, the way a smooth man does. He lowered the light. Thank God. The whole system went down. Power, comms, everything at once. I came as fast as I could. I've been trying to clear the house. There may be intruders. Stop. Cole's voice cut across the dark. Don't. I've seen the transfers, Vance. 6 months of them. I know who's paying you. I know what's in that bag. Vance went still. The friendly mask didn't crack so much as dissolve, sliding off to show the colder thing beneath. He set down the phone light on the hall table, its beam casting a thin pool across the marble between them, and shifted the leather bag behind his leg. You weren't supposed to be here, Vance said quietly. You were supposed to come home in the morning to a different world, a reasonable conversation, a signature, nobody hurt. He shrugged, almost regretful. It still doesn't have to go badly. The drives in this bag hold the keys to everything you own. You sign the routes over, and your mother stays exactly as safe as she is right now. That's the deal. It was always the deal. My mother. Cole took a step forward. Where is she? Below, in the dark, with your maid. A thin smile. I locked the safe room before any of this started. Whatever's happening down there, it's already over. My men are thorough. He lifted the bag. Be smart, Cole. Be the businessman your father was. Take the deal that keeps everyone breathing. Cole's hands curled into fists. 20 minutes of imagining the worst, of dead phones and a black house, and this man stood there bargaining with his mother's life like a closing line. Every instinct screamed at him to cross the floor and put Vance through the marble, but a voice in his memory was louder. The second your pride is louder than my voice, your mother's the one who pays for it. So he held. He kept Vance talking. He kept the man's eyes on him, which meant Vance never heard what came up the stairs behind him. Your men aren't thorough, said a calm voice from the dark at his back. They're asleep, all 3 of them. Down in your corridors, exactly where you sent them. Vance spun. Sarah stood at the top of the lower stair, and beside her, one hand resting lightly on her guardian's arm, stood Evelyn Miller. The old woman's blind eyes found the center of the room with that unerring instinct, fixing on Vance as though she could see him clear as day. The thin light from the hall table threw their shadows long across the floor. For the first time, Vance looked rattled. His careful plan had a maid and a blind woman in it as victims, not as the two people standing between him and the door. "The safe room," he said, half to himself. "I locked the—" "You did," Sarah agreed, stepping down into the foyer, putting herself at an angle so Vance had Cole on one side and her on the other. "You're a careful man. You thought of everything. You just didn't think the blind woman could hear your boathouse meeting through an open window. Everything that happened tonight happened because of a sound you were sure no one caught." Vance's eyes flicked between them, Cole ahead, Sarah to the side, the door behind. A cornered man doing math. The math was bad. He did the only thing a desperate man does. He bluffed, and he moved.
"You think capturing me ends it?"
He backed toward the door, bag clutched to his chest, free hand raised. "There are people above me, the family that paid me. You stop me, you've stopped nothing. They'll send someone else, and you'll never see the next one coming." He hit the edge of Evelyn's reach. She'd been tracking him the whole time, not with her eyes, with her ears, with the scuff of his shoes on the marble, with the direction of his voice as he backed toward escape. She'd waited, patient as 11 years had taught her to be, for him to come within the length of a cane. He stepped into it. Evelyn shifted her weight exactly as she'd practiced in the courtyard 100 times and swept the cane low and hard across the back of his ankles. It was a clean, simple, perfect strike. Vance's legs went out from under him. The leather bag flew from his hands and the drives spilled across the marble, and he came down on his back with a crack that knocked the breath from him. Before he could draw it back, Sarah was on him. She didn't hit him. She didn't need to. She turned him onto his front with a practiced economy of motion, brought his wrists together behind his back, and the zip ties she'd kept in the maid's apron pocket all night closed around them with 3 quick pulls. It was over in 5 seconds. No shots, no blood. A blind woman, a cane, and a maid who was never a maid. Cole walked across the foyer, picked up the scattered drives one by one, and stood looking down at the man who'd held a flashlight at his father's grave. "You were right about one thing," Cole said quietly. "I never saw it coming." He looked up at his mother, at Sarah. She did. Evelyn lifted her face toward her son in the dark and smiled. 3 days later, the house was full of light again. The power was back. The compromised men had been quietly handed over to the proper authorities, along with Sarah's drives and a paper trail that left no room for argument. Vance and his 2 inside men were no longer Cole's problem. The rival family that had funded the whole thing had gone very still, the way predators do when they realize the easy prey was never prey at all. Cole had spent 2 days rebuilding his security from the ground up, vetting every name, trusting no one's word but his own eyes and one other person's judgment. Now it was afternoon, and the back deck of the estate was warm with sun. The lake threw light off the water in soft, shifting sheets. Cole sat in a deck chair beside his mother, a pitcher of iced tea sweating on the table between them, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, the knot in his chest had loosened. "You're quiet," Evelyn said. She had her face turned toward the warmth, eyes closed, looking more at peace than he'd seen her in years. "I'm thinking." "You're always thinking. That's your trouble." She reached over and patted his arm, finding it without searching. "Your father was the same. He'd sit right where you're sitting and turn a problem over and over, long after the problem had solved itself." "This one didn't solve itself, Mom. You solved it." Cole shook his head slowly. "I've been over it 100 times. If you hadn't heard them, if you'd come to me instead of going around me, if you'd trusted my judgment the way I expected you to," he let out a breath, "I'd have walked right into it. I'd have lost the house, maybe lost you, because I was too proud to imagine my own men could turn." "You were too proud," Evelyn agreed gently. "But you also came home early the one day it mattered. And you listened the one time you needed to.
A man who can't ever be wrong is dangerous. A man who can finally hear it, that one I'm not worried about. The deck door slid open behind them. Sarah stepped out into the sun, and Cole almost didn't recognize her. The apron was gone for good. The flustered maid was gone. She wore a sharp, dark tactical suit, tailored and professional, and she carried herself the way she'd really been carrying herself all along, now that she no longer had to hide it. She looked exactly like what she was, the most capable person on the property. "The new perimeter system's live," she said. "Hardwired backup on its own power source, separate from the grid. Comms tower's got a redundant line buried on a different route. If anyone tries to take the house dark again, they'll have to cut 3 things at once, and the second they touch any of them, it pings a number that isn't on this property." She gave a small, satisfied nod. "It won't happen the way it happened. Not twice." Cole rose from his chair. He reached into his jacket and took out a single folded sheet of paper. Sarah's eyes went to it. "Your Maid contract," he said. He held it up between 2 fingers, then tore it cleanly in half and in half again, and let the pieces fall to the deck. "You were never a maid. We both know it. I'm not going to insult you by letting you pretend for one more day." Sarah's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes did, a flicker of caution. She'd walked away from this work once. She'd told him why, in a diner, over a coffee she never drank. Cole saw it. He took out a second piece of paper. "So, here's the other one." He held it out to her. "Head of Global Family Security. Full authority over every detail of how my family and my organization are protected. You answer to me on the business, on the safety of the people in this house." He glanced at his mother. "You answer to no one. Your call is final, even over mine." Sarah took the paper but didn't unfold it. "The last client who didn't override me," she said carefully, "is the reason I quit. You told me at the gym you run point, that it's your house, your call when it matters." "It was my call when it mattered," Cole said. "And the one time it mattered most, the smartest thing I did was stand still and let you and my mother do your jobs." He held her gaze. "I'm not the client who knows better, Sarah. I'm the one who learned. That clause is real. Your call is final. In writing." She studied him a long moment, weighing the man the way she'd weighed him the first time she saw him step through the hedge. Then, slowly, she unfolded the paper, read it, and a real smile broke across her face. Not the bright, breathy smile of the maid, a quieter one. The smile of a person who'd found, against the odds, a place worth landing. "All right," she tucked the contract away. "But I have one condition of my own." "Name it." "Your mother keeps training." Sarah turned toward Evelyn. "She's too good to stop now, and someday, when I'm old and slow, I want to know there's still someone in this house who can hear trouble coming before it knocks." Evelyn laughed, a warm sound that rolled out across the deck and the bright water beyond. "Oh, I have no intention of stopping. I'm just getting good." She turned her face toward Sarah. "Tomorrow afternoon, the courtyard. Bring the staff." Cole shook his head, but he was smiling now too, the knot in his chest gone for good. He picked up the pitcher and poured 3 glasses of iced tea, and for a while the 3 of them sat in the warm afternoon, the lake glittering, the house secure behind them. As Cole stood to head back inside, he caught the last thing he expected to see. His blind mother, her face tilted towards Sarah, gave a slow, deliberate, unmistakable wink, as if 11 years of darkness had never once dimmed the mischief in her. Sarah winked back, and the 2 of them, the guardian and the woman who'd hired her in secret, sat together in the sun, already planning tomorrow.